Some of you young folks been saying to me, "Hey, Pops, what you mean, what a wonderful world? How about all them wars all over the place? You call them wonderful? And how about hunger and pollution? They ain't so wonderful either. But how about listening to old Pops for a minute? Seems to me it ain't the world that's so bad, but what we are doing to it. And all I'm saying is see what a wonderful world it would be if only we'd give it a chance. Love, baby, love. That's the secret. Yeah. If lots more of us loved each other, we'd solve lots more problems. And man, this world would be a guesser. That's why old Pops keeps saying, I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I ever knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Going into the presence, as I light the candles, the Unity candle and our candle for January, which represents faith, let's sing our song, Surely the Presence.
Surely the
Let's take this very special moment with one another to really focus in on that presence. Focus in on your heart center as we say, divine, loving, intelligent Spirit. We are all here together to celebrate life, to celebrate our faith not just in God, but our faith in one another, our faith that we know that Christ consciousness, that Buddha consciousness, that all-encompassing Spirit is within each of us. Whatever you know that to be, whatever your name is for all that is within, that point of power that radiates this divine being in us and through us and as us, we live, move, and have our being in a celebration of this life. This is our faith. Our faith in God, our faith in one another to be that Spirit, and our faith in the world exactly as it is, no matter what outer appearances may be telling us. The world is good. The world is wonderful. The world is our playground to share with one another. And so, and this sacred circle that we are creating here right now, I invite you to bring to mind all those who are weighing heavy on your hearts, your minds, who are connecting with you on a soul level. And I invite you to speak their names out loud.
Merlin, Sheldar, Scotty, Sheila,
Ron. Yes, yes, and yes. These names are also children of God. They are divine beings. And as we speak their names out loud, the vibration reaches to the heavens, is held by the angels, the true messengers of God, and it is enfolded into our consciousness. And so there is one more name I would like to put on your minds and hearts, and that is Ron Soleil. Ron is a member of our congregation. He is here often on Sunday mornings, and he is facing some health challenges. And so we would like to wrap that love and light and life, energy, all around the vision we are holding of him in our mind's eye. We know that the highest truth of Ron is not only what is outside of him is not the truth of him, but his own body is not the highest truth of him. This body is the vehicle through which he knows Spirit. The vehicle through which he knows the Spirit of God in all of our faces. And so that when we look upon Ron, we are reflecting the light that he is. We see this truth. We see God emanating from Ron now. And we know that it is good. All is well, truly. The cells of his body are lighting up with the desire to be in perfect divine order. And it is good. So we hold this truth as together we say our Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. and lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Amen, and so it is. Let's keep this energy moving forward as we move into meditation. I would invite you to just let go of anything you are holding that is distracting to you. Be relaxed. Relaxed enough that you can open your mind and receive this word. Breathing in. Allowing as we release our breath. Letting go. Letting more. Our word this morning is grace. And I'm reading to you from the Daily Word from August of 2018. And the affirmation for this word, grace, is, I am the activity of God expressing as me. I am the activity of God expressing as me. The grace of God is like a flowing river, a wellspring of light, love, and abundance. This wellspring gently leads me through the circumstances of life. I don't need to worry about why or how God's grace is revealed. I trust that through it, I will have the insight, I will have the resources and the skills to make good things happen in my life. My grace is sufficient for you. These words from the Apostle Paul to the Corinthians are a reminder that I have within me the necessities to live a free and abundant life. My grace is sufficient for you. Whatever my need, whatever I am concerned about, I can be sure that through divine grace, the answer will be sufficient for me and those I care about. God's grace is more than enough for me because I am the activity of God expressing as me. And from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 10, by the grace of God, I am what I am. I am what I am. Let's take that thought in with the in-breath. I am what I am, and exhale. Yes. I am what I am, right into that heart center. Exhaling. Yes. Continuing to focus on your breath. For just a moment, let's just sit with the thought that by the grace of God, I am what I am. Let that be. Let that reverberate. Let the vibration of that truth fill you in your heart, in your mind, knowing I am the activity of God expressing as me. Now, for a moment, in the silence. to the room, back to your neighbor sitting next to you. Feeling the energy that is filling this room. It is coming from you. It is coming from your neighbor. It is coming from each of us as we vibrate to the tuning of grace. Amazing grace. That sweetness that fills the air and surrounds us and swirls around us as we know we live and move and have our being in and as the grace of God. And so it is. Okay. How's everybody doing? Excuse me. So I love our affirmation. I love the affirmation in that meditation, the daily word. I am the activity of God expressing as me. That's a really good one. And then the one we're working with for the month, we're doing grace this month. Grace is an upward pull of the universe, lifting me to the heights of my divine nature. Lifting me to the heights of divine nature. I've got an extra word in mind. Let me give that to you piece by piece, and you can repeat it back to me. Grace is an upward pull of the universe.
Grace is an upward pull of the universe.
Lifting me to the heights.
Lifting me to the heights
of divine nature.
Of divine nature.
I know you can see it, but I wanted to do that because a little bit of that is kind of scratchy writing, isn't it? And I don't know if you can see that in the back. Yeah, so grace is one of those words that kind of trips me up, which is interesting. I've done a talk on grace before. I think, Rick, you've done a talk on grace before. And I couldn't find, I didn't have access to my computer, so I'm like, we're just going to wing this and we're going to start over kind of with it. And I came across a quote, and I think it's in the article that I had sent out on Thursday. And, it kind of reminded me, and I'm going to go through those today too, that, I don't know what grace is really. It's an experience. I don't know how to really talk about grace. Just like God, how do you really talk about God? I haven't figured that out yet. God is an experience. Anything I can get up here and say and do is just, it's mind candy. It just gives you something to focus on. It's not real if you're not experiencing it. And grace is really something that needs to be experienced. The only thing I knew about grace as a kid, growing up Catholic, was the saying my dad always said. After church, we'd go through. We didn't live in a great neighborhood, and so driving along, you'd see people less fortunate on the street, or walking around and looking like they may be up to no good, just our observations, our judgments. And he would say, there, but for the grace of God go I. Right? That's what I thought. That's all I knew really about grace. Well, I could have it worse. That was my message. Things could be worse. So that was my understanding of grace. This whole year, we're starting a new year. We're starting with a new theme. Our theme is One Humanity, Many Stories. I want to read this little blurb from the website, from unity.org. It says, sometimes it is said that if you knew another person's story, you couldn't help but love them. Each of us has known hardship and heartbreak, just as each of us has known joy. Some people have overcome unimaginable adversity, while others seem to have been blessed with all a human being could ever want. Yet a greater story overarches them all. We are all one. Despite the appearances of our separate bodies, individual personalities, and different pursuits, we are one humanity. Like a prism divides light into a rainbow of colors. We humans express God in infinite ways. One God, one humanity, many stories. So that kind of gets me excited and motivated about the coming year. Judy had a great idea. Do you remember what you told me?
No.
Okay, I know. I had to ask because I said that, and she's like, what?
Oh, I know.
Okay, so this was about a month ago you said this to me, so I don't, yeah, so I guess it was at a Unity of Tustin where once a month they would have somebody come up to the front, don't get scared yet, and talk about just, 5 or 10 minutes of what is your life. Just 5 minutes. How did you get to this point in time, right? If you're 70, that, you got to condense it down to 5 minutes. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. Because we are all part of that tapestry that makes Unity of the Sierra and that makes our place in the world. The tapestry of the whole world begins and ends with each of us. And how great would it be to just know something that we, share something that we don't really know about you. Maybe it's a hardship you went through and you came out the other end, and we all come out the other end. Are we coming out the other end for the worse or the better? How did you handle it? What are some of the things you've struggled with? What are some of the successes you've experienced, and how do you define success? I auditioned for clown college. Did you know that? Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey. I was 15 years old and they accepted me. I didn't go. But I had a great audition. I got my getup on. And, that would have been fun to travel the country and go to clown school and be a clown for Ringling Brothers. Who doesn't want to do that? Of course, they accepted me, and they wouldn't take me until I was 17, and 2 years later I was over it, so I didn't go. But these are the things. We don't really know all of our stories, do we? And we like to keep some things secret. Some things that might be embarrassing, or maybe a trouble that you had that you don't really want to talk about it because you're really not quite over it yet. Or maybe you keep repeating the same pattern. But I just think it's so rich and divine to know these little tidbits of one another. We get to experience one another because it changes how we look at each other, right? If someone were to walk in this room just dressed like a bum and come up here and give the most eloquent speech because maybe he's a Harvard graduate, you don't know that by looking at him or her or by the color of someone's skin. We have these biases. We say we're not prejudiced, and I'm sure we're not, but we have these inherent biases that we all grew up with that are just ingrained in us. And so it's easy for us to read a book by its cover. So this year we're going to just go a little bit deeper with that, take a fresh look at how we see the world, and then maybe it'll be easier to not be so judgmental, which opens up this expansive way for us to see different possibilities. When we're not so quick to judge, even though we don't feel like we're judging, when we let go some of those biases, it just opens up space for more of what we want to experience with and as and interacting with God, the God in each of us. So not knowing what grace is, I just did an internet search and I came up with a few things for you. This is a blogger, Amy Reese Anderson, and she quotes Marjorie Hinckley when she says, "There isn't a person you wouldn't love if you could read their whole story." There isn't a person you wouldn't love if you could read their whole story. She says, "We see people through a certain lens. We make snap judgments. We make assumptions about their lives from what we see on the outside. We get a first impression, and then we put them into a box to define them. But then when we get to know a person, and I mean truly get to know a person, their hopes, their fears, their insecurities, their hurts, their wishes, their regrets, their goals, their failures, their successes, and we truly learn their whole story, well, we will find that it is difficult not to love them once we learn all they have been through in their lives." And there's this branch of psychology that really does hardcore down to the root of the story therapy, based on the idea that if any one of us were to have a Freaky Friday moment, do you know what I mean by that? That Disney movies, Freaky Friday, really? Okay, somebody tell Randy what Freaky Friday is later. But when your consciousness goes into someone else's body and you switch places, it is said, now the theory isn't about Freaky Friday, but it is saying that if you were really to walk in somebody else's shoes, like for real, you would make all the same choices that person is making. So if that person has struggled with addictions and you haven't, right, and you get plopped into their body, you've got their DNA, you've got all of their life experiences, none of your own, your life experiences are gone, you would make every single choice that person was making. There's something really interesting that says about consciousness. And if we're on our paths and we're growing in consciousness and we're doing the work that needs to be done, that can't just be for our own benefit. That is for the benefit of everyone. So when that person who is struggling to come out of their addiction or to struggling to come out of poverty or whatever it is that we have our bias as that is less than, we are raising that vibration for everyone when we do the work that we do with Spirit. That vibration lifts the consciousness of the whole planet. We are affecting real change. And so someone else who isn't quite there yet in this life, in this experience, gets the benefit of that. And so that's the good news. That's the exciting news. Barack Obama says the biggest deficit that we have in our society and in the world right now is an empathy deficit. We are in great need of people being able to stand in somebody else's shoes and see the world through their eyes. We all kind of try to do that, I think. And we have that expression, well, if you were to walk a mile in my shoes or their shoes, and we can use our power of imagination. But to really do it and know that probably you would be making the exact same choices, that takes it to another level of empathy, of understanding, of acceptance. Not toleration, but acceptance. Toleration is the word we used years ago. To say, I'm going to tolerate somebody else's opinion who differs from me. I'll tolerate them. They can be my neighbor. Okay, I'll tolerate that. They can come into my neighborhood. They can come to my church. I'll tolerate that. But there's this happening with your hand, right? There's still that separation. Whereas if we replace the word tolerate with acceptance, we get a whole nother level, a whole nother nuances of I love you exactly the way you are. We don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to understand things the same way. But I see in you that child of God that I feel in me. So when Jesus said, love one another, he was talking about loving one another as we love ourselves. And we might think, well, I don't really love myself that much, or I don't really treat myself that great. But the first commandment should be know thyself. Know thyself. Because if we really knew ourselves, we would know just exactly how divine we are. And then we could really see that spark of divinity in everyone without our biases. So that's my soapbox on that. And then there is that old fun phrase, but there for the grace of God go I. So the etymology of this phrase is, this is from Wiktionary, allegedly from a mid-16th century statement by John Bradford. There but for the grace of God goes John Bradford, is what he said. And so he was saying that in reference to a group of prisoners being led to execution. And then it believes that this is a paraphrase from the Bible, 1 Corinthians 15:8-10, which we read part of earlier. Last of all, as to one born abnormally, he appeared to me, for I am the least of the apostles, not fit to be called an apostle. This is Paul. Because I persecuted the church of God, but by the grace of God, I am what I am. By the grace of God, I am what I am. So that is a call to be thankful, to be who and what we are. And the more we peel away those layers, think of layers of an onion, that's what always comes to mind for me. As we get to the root, that gooey center of what we are. I mean, that's the goal, really. To know ourselves as divine light. We get to experience so much more of our world, of our surroundings. Let's see, Wiktionary goes on to say, a recognition, it's defining there, but for the grace of God go I, as a recognition that others' misfortune could be one's own if it weren't for the blessing of the divine or for one's luck. Right? So we got to do our own metaphysical translation here. We don't really believe in luck, do we? Not metaphysically. 2, humankind's fate is in God's hands. That's old traditional Christianity, isn't it? And then number 3, more generally, our fate is not entirely in our own hands. So you kind of have both sides of the scale there. It's in God's hands, and we know that not to be true. But then, more generally, even more generally than that, than just me specifically, our fate, humankind's fate, is not entirely in our own hands. So we can wrestle with what part of that do we hear some truth, and what part of that is confusing and doesn't really work for us. Both are happening at the same time. This idea of I'm creating my reality and an overarching fate. They're both happening at the same time. We all have made agreements. We all have made agreements to interact with one another, to be in relationship with one another, and yet we've got that free will component. But again, when we get to that gooey center and know that our free will is really lining up with God's will, then it kind of connects that loop of predestination versus free will. Did I lose you in on that one? A little bit. We'll do another talk on that. We'll do that later. Okay. Let's see. I want to go back to this article that I sent out to you on Thursday because there's some really great quotes in here. So this is me. This is St. Augustine said, "What is grace? I know until you ask me, but then when you ask me, I do not know." That's me. She quotes The Quest, which is an old Unity book written by Richard and Mary Alice Joffola, that says, "The gift is yours from God simply because you are God's child. You didn't have to earn it, and you don't have to prove you deserve it. It is yours unconditionally. It comes with being part of creation. It is the gift of grace." Then she quotes monk and mystic Thomas Merton, who wrote, "Grace is not a strange magic substance which is subtly filtered into our souls to act as a kind of spiritual penicillin. Grace is unity, oneness within ourselves, oneness with God." I like that, spiritual penicillin. And then she goes to the Bible, Ephesians. I didn't say Reverend Margot Ford. In Ephesians, she quotes chapter 2, 8, 9. We read, "For grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not the results of work." Ding, 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 ding. That's the ticket right there. It's not because we've earned it. Grace isn't something we earn. We have grace because we have been born out of the creation of the one source. And in Timothy, second book of Timothy 1:6, "For this reason I remind you to rekindle the gift of God that is within you." So because we have this gift that is inherent within us, now that we know that, it is our duty to pay attention to it, to give it attention, to give it love, to be in thanksgiving with it. To rekindle the gift of God that is within you. So, when throughout the year, I know some of you are just scared out of your minds, and some of you might be getting that little, I wonder if that's for me. Throughout the year, when you want to come up here, when you are invited to come up here and just give a little blurb about yourself, we are all going to hold you in loving grace. It's going to be such a gift. And if it terrifies you, and I think Judy's going to go first because I want you, Judy, to tell people about that mental process you went through when it was your turn. And then what happened with your life after that. I mean, it can be transformational. It really can. These fears that we think. But, the best time and place to overcome a fear is when you are surrounded by love and support. And so I wanted to keep that in mind as I tell you this little tiny story here. Victor Daly, the Australian poet, was being tenderly cared for in a Catholic hospital as he was dying. One of his last acts was to thank the nurses for all their kindness to him. The nurse said, "Don't thank us. Thank the grace of God." And Victor Daly responded, "But aren't you the grace of God?" Grace comes to us through the loving kindness of others. Sometimes it's the universe conspiring for our good and just bringing everything together to a point that we are exactly where we need to be when we need to be there to receive. And that is grace. But it's also the kind words that we give one another. When someone comes into your mind, call them. Say, "Hey, I've been thinking about you lately. What's going on?" We don't know what other people are going through. That's a good New Year's resolution for me. Because people come to my mind all the time, but I'm on the freeway or I'm in the middle of work and I don't stop and call. So you might be getting a lot more calls this year. That could be happening. Okay. Voicemail, yes. Grace is an upward pull of the universe. Do you see how that's possible now? When we interact with one another in loving kindness, that is grace, and that can pull someone else up. And as that pulls someone else up, it could pull you up. In our prosperity class yesterday, we talked about the dopamine that is released in our brain, that feel-good hormone that creates this sense of well-being and even joy within us when we receive a gift. But then the giver of that gift gets twice the dopamine hit. So think about that too. Another way to lift our consciousness and the whole planet is to keep our dopamine levels high. When we are in loving kindness, we get to experience that more. So grace is an upward pull of the universe, lifting me to the heights of my divine nature. So my imagination is this swirling vortex of energy that is just lifting me up, all the while knowing that everything is happening right here, right now, in the goodness that is shared between us. Okay, so think about your stories of grace. Think about what grace means to you. Think about the struggles and the successes and the joys that you've had because of grace. And think about if you're willing to share that with us. I love you all immensely, and I will support you in anything and everything you want to accomplish for yourselves. And if there's anything I can do ever to support you in that you don't feel I am doing, I want you to let me know. Because I am here only for you. That is why I do what I do. I am here to serve you. So let that grace open up in your lives. Receive the gift. Let it touch that part of you that already is grace, already knows grace on an experiential level. And when you feel called to do so, reciprocate in kindness and share that loving kindness with the world. So let's say that affirmation. I'll say it one time and then you can try and read what was up there. Grace is an upward pull of the universe, lifting me to the heights of my divine nature. Grace is an upward pull of the universe, lifting me to the heights of my divine nature. You have lyrics for this next song.
When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side. Times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down. when you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I'll take your part. When darkness comes and pain is all around, oh, just like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled water. Sail on, silver bird, sail on by. Your time has come to shine, and all your dreams are on their way. See how they shine. If you need a friend, I'm sailing right behind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will lead you right, like a bridge over troubled water. I will lead your
Awesome. Okay, we get to breathe and relax. We got through it. And now it's time to take out our gifts that we would like to share with our community. Do this in consciousness and with intention. As you gather your things and you hold them lovingly in your hands or next to your heart, or whatever it is that is comfortable to you, know that the energy of God is present right here, right now. And let's say our blessing together. Divine love, flowing as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And I am so grateful.
Makes no difference what you're going through. see you through. Hold your head up, put a smile on your face. This is another test. It won't last always. So get ready for your blessing. Get ready for your miracle. Get ready for your blessing. Get ready for your miracle. Listen, I know you've been hurting deep down inside. Let me encourage you, it's gonna be alright. Troubles and trials come to make you strong. Keep on believing, you keep holding on. Get ready for your blessing. Get ready for your miracle. Get ready for your blessing. Get ready for your miracle. Thank you, Jesus. God's got a blessing. Everybody say that with me. God's got a blessing. If you really believe it, God's got a blessing. Come on. God's got a blessing. Oh, yeah, yeah. Come on, God's got a blessing. God's got a blessing. God's got a blessing. God's got a blessing. With your name on it. God's got a blessing. God's got a blessing. God's got a blessing. With your name on it. 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 How many of God's got a blessing with your name on it? Come on. Sing this with me. Come on, say. God's got a blessing. Everybody. God's got a blessing. You say God's got a blessing. Come on. Everybody say God's got a blessing. Come on, Jay. God's got a blessing. God's got a blessing. God's got a blessing. With your name on it. God's got a blessing. God's got a blessing. God's got a blessing. How about you? With my name on it. 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 What did you say? With my name on it. 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 God bless you. Thank you for coming. And I love you.
All right, so one more time, let me just bring your attention up here to be present with these gifts you have given, to know that the energy as we give, we receive. It is said to be so, and we know through experience of the divine that it is true, and it is good, and it is all good, and it is of the source that we share in divine oneness. And so it is.